What we have on this drawing then is an example site. So I've just double clicked on the middle mouse button there to try and zoom out a little bit. This is a simplified version of the site to make it a little bit more easy just to do what we need to do. On this drawing we have some blue lines that represent elements of the site. The red lines are a line that we will use later just to put a boundary around the outside of the site. We have the street names here for the two different streets, some planting and a bench. We also have two rectangles here representing the houses that will go on the plots. The plot numbers will all need to be numbered appropriately. And then we have an arrow here. In the example that I'm going to do, I will choose a one-way street, so we will use the arrows to indicate that later on. So firstly, we need to work out what size the site is so that we can decide what to do with it and what size some elements within the site are going to be also. So these lines here represent a road, which is going to be one way, and then two footpath areas either side of it. So let's work out what the sizes of these are first of all. If we hover in between these two elements just either side of the footpath, that is giving us a distance of 1,500 millimeters, and then the width of the road is 4,000 millimeters, and then the width of the other footpath is 1,500 millimeters. So that is a total of 7 meters for a road that is one direction, a one-way street, and then a footpath either side of that. Okay, so bearing in mind that we do have potentially reopening Chambers Street and Radcliffe Street, that will be two areas or two lengths of 7 meters that will need to be added in there. So let's have a look at the overall size of the site. So from one side to the other, from that point over to the far side is 84 meters or 84,000 millimeters. That's 84 millimeters there, just using the decimal point move there to work out that that is 84 meters. Now let's also remember that we need a footpath around the edge of the site, so maybe that's the first thing to do. Remembering that along the bottom and up around the side here, this is where Posnet Street runs. We need to maintain a distance of 1,500. So I've clicked on the offset tool there, and I will type in a distance of 1,500. And then offset each of these lines down here that represents where the footpath will be. You can navigate around the drawing as necessary just to do that. And let's also remember that we want to make sure the road is going to be appropriate, has an appropriate radius for footpaths and for vehicles on the road. So I know from doing other work that we can use a fillet tool here. Click on that tool and we need to press the down arrow on your keyboard just to get the radius tool there. So first of all, we'll put in a distance of 6,000 millimeters, and we will click the two outside lines here, and maybe just for completeness we will hit enter to repeat that command and use these two lines here. That has put a small curved element in there. Notice that these two lines here sort of partly overlap, so we'll need to fix those in a moment as well. We will now use a radius tool or the fillet tool with a radius of a different size. So down arrow and then clicking on radius again and type in 3,000 millimeters this time, and then clicking on these two lines. Okay. So now at this stage, I'm just using shortcut key DI. You can always go back and use that tool. So DI from there over to that point is 82,500. So you may need to click on the little calculator tool here to have your calculator appear on the screen. I have it docked on the side there just for easy access. So 82,500, and we want to put in the two roads, so that's two widths of 7,000, which is 14,000. So 82,500 minus 14000. Hit enter. Okay. Now let's think about this in terms of how we divide up the plots. Remember that there needs to be a total of 19 plots overall on the site. Hopefully that number stays in there. Yeah, 68,500. So we need to add a number of plots, plus if we have two roads here, there will be areas in between. So I know that if we put Radcliffe Street is actually, from memory, the name of the street down here, and Chambers Street is the one that is on the right hand side of the site. So if we put these two roads sort of either side of the center of the site, that will mean we have a strip for housing down here. We will have a broader strip in the middle where we can have two rows, and then over here also two rows, probably accessed from either side. So that's a total of 5 strips. So that number then, 68,500, needs to be divided by 5. So that is a distance of 13,700. So we can offset 13,700 from here. Okay, and that almost meets where this little line is. That will be helpful. Okay. And then if we move this line, or the set of lines, if we move that from the bottom point there over to that other line, that will put that road where we need it to be. So we can then delete one of those lines. We don't need double lines in that scenario. So 13,700, if we multiply that by 2 now, that's 27. Well, actually, I guess we do need the middle between the plots anyhow, so offset by 13,700 should be okay. That is the previous distance already showing on the cursor, so we don't need to repeat typing that in. If we just hit enter, that will use that distance. So we offset once and then twice, and I think I either hit enter or escape there without thinking. We don't need to copy the very left hand line there, but we can pick up these other 3 lines for the footpaths and the road width. We can use the copy tool here and copy from that point over to here, and that gives us then a position where that site needs to be, or that road needs to be. We can offset again by 13,700, and that will show us where the boundary between some of these other plots is going to be. Now I want to use the extend tool next, so we can, rather than use the trim tool, click a little triangle or arrow there and flip over to the extend tool. And you could click on each of those lines individually, but a faster way is just to click here somewhere and draw a line through all the lines we wish to extend. And now if we hit enter, that will have put those into the right area there. Okay, so equally then we want to have a think about how we divide up the site in the other direction. If we need 19 in total, probably adding 3 down here would mean that we need 16 more, so each of these strips can be divided into 4. That seems like that's going to work okay. So let's go back to using the trim tool and just trim out the end of those lines so they're not interfering with the footpath. Actually, no, before we do that, we need to trim the road. So I hit undo there, and let's use the trim tool to trim out the middle of the road there first of all. And then, yeah, I guess what you do need to do now is use the fillet tool actually. So what was the distance we had on there previously? 3000. So let's do the inside of the footpaths first of all. It may take you just a little moment to do this. I'm going to do it as quickly as I can so as not to hold the video up. I'm just hitting enter to repeat some of those commands. Up at the top here, yeah, so up at the top the footpath actually extends a little bit before you can then get that onto the front road where Donegal Pass is, isn't it? Donegal Pass. So I'm not going to worry about that top end of the site just in this demo video, but you'll get enough out of the principles here to fix the top end as well. So the radius for the road itself is 6,000. So again, we just need to go quickly through and get that to work properly for the various corners at the bottom here. And now we can trim. I'm just typing in TR for simplicity. Something looks a wee bit off actually in terms of that width. What have I done? Properties, 3000, 6000. Yeah, the footpath thins there, so maybe technically those radiuses should be 2500, should they? That looks better in terms of the distance. It's just an issue in the way it looks at the moment. It'll do for now. Maybe the radius does need to be a slightly different one. I will check that and let you know in class. So what we can do at this stage is take a dimension here. So 50,500. Again, we can go in and type in that number. So delete that, 50,500 divided by 3 in this case. So something like 16,800 in terms of a distance there, 16,800. 16,800. We can offset that down once and then twice. Really, to be neat and tidy, we should trim those pieces off, I suppose. And in the middle of the site here, then we need to also work out what that distance is and divide it. So 64,500. Pressing escape at the wrong time there. Okay, 64,500 divided by 4 equals 16,125. 16,125, so offset 16,125. Offset that down on both elements of the site here. And then again, we can go round and just trim off elements that we don't need here, just to keep things as tidy as possible. You just need to make sure you haven't left a wee accidental length of line in there that you don't need. So again, TR or the trim tool on the keyboard works for all of this. So that's the site split up into 19 plots. Now, evidently, if you have a slightly different plot layout, you need to work things slightly differently. So it might mean things end up a little bit more complicated, just depending on what you need to do. So at this stage, I think the best thing to do next is move the street names. So we don't want the street names at that angle. We want them to be at a right angle, 90-degree turned round from that. So think about the way you would have books labeled on the end of the spine, how the name of a book would be on the spine. So you'd want to turn your head to the right rather than to the left to be able to read the text properly. So you may need to right click to get the properties window showing up properly. If you right click and go to the one up from the bottom, properties, that will show the window probably in the middle of your screen. I have it docked on the left here just for handiness. So we are looking for the rotation, and I think if we type in 270, it will put it around the way that we want it. Okay, so Radcliffe Street will be this one in the middle here. At this stage, sometimes I do like to put it exactly in the middle of the street, but for the level of accuracy required here, it's probably best just to zoom in a little bit and eyeball it. It should be not far from what we need. Just in the middle of the length of the street there. We will do the same then with the second piece of text. So the rotation again, 270, enter. And we can then move that down like so. And then we also want the arrows to be at the bottom and top of each of these streets. So for the first one, we will take that and move it down just using the move tool here. And this time I do want it to be in the middle, so I'm going to hit shift and right click and choose mid between 2 points. And the 2 points are either side of the road there. So that's now in the middle, and we can move it down a little bit just so it's away from the junction slightly. And then again, you know, I am going quick here, but if you need to review something, you can always pause it and go back. So we've copied that down. At this stage, I'm going to select both of those lines and then copy it over. So the street widths are exactly the same. We can use the endpoint on the right hand side of one road over to the right hand side on the other. That is perfect. Okay. You do have the decision in your teams to decide which way the streets would go. If you're doing one-way streets, it's probably best to have one direction and the other the opposite direction. So I'm going to make Chambers Street the other way just by using the mirror tool. Do we want to erase the source objects? In this case, yes. We want the arrow to point north rather than south. So again, just using the mirror tool there to accomplish that. Finally, then, a few things just to do with the house and the planting before we would add on the site boundary. So with this, we will go and just select the two rectangles and the two pieces of text. I'm going to use the move tool and select a front edge of where the houses may be. So we do have two options here. One is we could say, right, I want the houses to be, in this case we need to be careful, we set it down in the right point, not the midpoint of that line, but the junction, the junction where these two lines meet, or indeed the end point of this line. So we could decide we want all of the house plots to be at this sort of an angle. Or indeed over here we might say a different option would be to put the houses here and then maybe rotate them. So I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. We'll rotate it by 90 degrees. We'll go back to the two pieces of text and change the rotation of those back to 0 so the text is showing in the right way. And we might say we do want the plots or the houses to be so close to the boundary of the plot, we might move that back up by 2 meters, say, just as an example. So now I'm going to copy that from the midpoint there to the other midpoints that are relevant. So here's one way, as I said, we could organize the plots with the houses bounding between the left and the right. Or on the other side here, we might want to do that so that the boundary on a different direction, like so. Again, that could be copied down here to the plots at the bottom. Now these plots here, well, we maybe just don't want them directly on the front of the plot either in these cases, so we could move them back by 2 meters or 2000 millimeters. Again, we'll do the same there. 2000. Okay. And this one, yeah, we'll just copy that down in the same fashion. Is that a wee bit close on the front edge there? Probably. You may wish to rotate it around to be in line with the footpath, or when this is happening, it might actually make you decide to do things a little bit differently. Over here, there is, if this is similar to the arrangement that you're looking for, you do have that choice to either put 3 terrace houses or maybe 1 detached or 3 detached or whatever. There's a little bit of flexibility just on what you decide to do there. With the odd number of plots, it does give the teams a little extra to think about this time round. Now, what I haven't added in is any public areas for planting and things like that. So we may end up going back and saying, you know what, we need to maybe shorten this by 2000 millimeters for the top plot, and then do the same here. Move by 2000 millimeters, and then we want to add in a planting area here of maybe 4 meters. Once we have that done, then we can use the extend tool and say, okay, this bit down here is for planting. And so we maybe bring that down here a little bit closer to where we need it. We might copy a couple of trees in there. You might decide that you want a bench. That's what that rectangle is. You might want a bench in that area. Just making sure it doesn't snap to a point where we don't want it. And then we might say, okay, we'll have some little bushes or something of a smaller nature in behind that bench. It's just indicative really at this point to give you something to think about. Maybe move it back slightly more from the edge of the footpath. Okay. Equally, we might decide that we want to put some bushes on each of the individual plots. You may wish to add some details just of where the driveway is, or where the car parking space may need to be. Again, you might put a bench on there or a trampoline. If you're adding a circle for a trampoline, get one of a size of a trampoline that's available online so that you know what is happening with that. When did that little bubble come up? Quite a long time ago, probably. I should have closed it earlier. So whatever you put on your individual plots is up to you. You may wish to add a car or a trampoline or something just to indicate where the footpath and where the driving, well, driveway might be a grand thing to call it just in terms of this size of plot, but yeah, it might be a little driveway area or a parking space area. So at this stage, it is over to you in terms of other things you may wish to design the site. Finally, now at this stage, we do need to have a boundary line for the site. Really, the boundary line needs to be done as accurately as possible, and I don't want to make the video too long, so I'm going to use a polyline at this point and roughly draw the site over again. So just going round by the boundary lines here. There is a little bit of an issue with the width of the footpath and so on here that would need to be resolved, so it's not perfect. Now, as I've started to draw this, I am on the wrong layer, which isn't great, but I can always move the line after we have finished. So really here we have I'm really doing this on purpose just to show that drawing the line over the top of what we have is not the correct thing to do. This is what some people have done in the past. So you could go to there and then sort of try and choose points in between. It's really quite tricky. The better thing to do is use existing lines and take a copy of them and create a full boundary line. I can always demonstrate that in a bit more detail at a later stage. So it's obviously not accurate there. The boundary line needs to follow that curve exactly. This is where people do go wrong sometimes in the past. And we can close that off now. So that is a polyline. It is on the wrong layer. And we'll move it over to the correct layer from this drop-down menu for the layers. GA outline, you should be using your own initials for your own layers, and if you wish to use my sample drawing, you can go in and edit these. Double click on the layers and just change the layer names in there. So that is the overall site boundary now shown. It's not terribly accurate. It does need to be more accurate than that, but this gives you a pretty good start in terms of trying to design your site and looking to see what's going to fit and what will work in your teams. So thanks very much for watching the video. Hopefully it is useful. You can let me know in class. Thank you.